Welcome back to Scary Mysteries. Tonight, we're diving deep into a case that shocked the world, the Idaho college murders case, and the chilling transformation of the suspect, a criminology student turned killer, Bryan Kohberger. This is a solo deep dive, the dark psychology behind Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho murders.
On the night of November 13th, 2022, 4 students at the University of Idaho, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were brutally stabbed to death in their off-campus home. The horror rippled across the college town of Moscow, Idaho, and investigators were scrambling for answers. Within 6 weeks, police arrested a suspect, someone nobody expected, Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology PhD student at nearby Washington State University. Because of his field of study, his arrest added an unsettling twist. Here was a man who studied crime, now accused of committing it. The investigation hinged on a few key pieces of evidence. DNA. A knife sheath was recovered at the crime scene. Forensic testing showed DNA that ultimately linked back to Kohberger through genetic genealogy. Phone records. Cell tower data placed Kohberger's phone near the victim's home in the crucial time frame. Vehicle surveillance. A white Hyundai Elantra, matching the make and model of Kohberger's car, was captured on video circling near the victim's house. Despite mounting evidence, one question haunted everyone. Why? What was the motive for this massacre? To understand this case, we must examine Kohberger, not just as a suspect, but as a person. His background reveals a complex and disturbing portrait. He held a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in criminal justice, and was pursuing a PhD in criminology. He studied under a well-known forensic psychologist, asked tough questions in class, and seemed deeply fascinated by violent crime. But academically curious doesn't necessarily mean dangerous, though in Kohberger's case, many believe the line blurred. Defense court filings describe his behavioral and cognitive traits in chilling detail. Extremely rigid thinking, perseveration on non-essential topics, limited insight into his own emotions, frequently distractible, circular language, matter-of-fact, and oddly formal phrasing. He reportedly rocked subtly in his seat when concentrating, maintained an intense gaze, and displayed social awkwardness. Then came a bombshell. In February 2025, he was diagnosed with level 1 autism spectrum disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, ADHD, and ARFID, avoidance/restrictive food intake disorder. These revelations came just months before he changed his plea. His defense argued that these diagnoses affected not just his behavior in court, but his entire ability to perceive and respond to the world. Some saw his cold demeanor or repetitive speech not as cruelty, but as manifestations of neurodivergence. Yet outside experts weren't convinced that mental health alone explained his violence. Kohberger's digital life painted another eerie layer. Investigators unearthed internet searches from his phone, including queries about serial killers like Ted Bundy, as well as pornography involving themes like forced, drugged, or sleeping. To many, these were more than morbid curiosities. They suggested a troubled internal world. He also amassed photos of young women, students from Washington State and the University of Idaho, some of them connected socially to the victims. According to classmates, he messaged at least one of the victims repeatedly in the months before the killings. Perhaps most disturbingly, he once posted on Reddit proposing a research project for ex-convicts to detail their emotions and behavior during crimes, how they planned them, how they felt while committing them, how they avoided capture. At the time, some may have dismissed it as academic. Later, it looks increasingly like a blueprint. So what pushed Kohberger to commit these murders? Psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman theorized that suppressed rage played a role. She suggested that some of the female victims resembled a girl who rejected him in middle school, and that the killings may have been fueled by a deeply personal, misogynistic fantasy. According to her, his anger was defiant, not remorseful. Others have pointed to fantasy homicide, a term used by serial killers like Dennis Rader, BTK. Ironically, Rader himself commented publicly, drawing parallels between his own crimes and Kohberger's: stalking, lying in wait, personal violence. That comparison has haunted many. Was this a crime of fantasy? One more layer. Several court filings indicate that Kohberger planned to shift blame away from himself. He reportedly wanted to argue at trial that 3 people socially connected to the victims, people who interacted with them shortly before their deaths and knew the layout of the home, were actually responsible. That raises a chilling question. Did he view this not just as a crime, but as a convoluted intellectual puzzle? In a dramatic turn, Kohberger pleaded guilty on July 2nd, 2025, as part of a plea deal that spared him the death penalty. Though he admitted to the killings, he did not explain his motive in open court. The deal also included a waiver of his right to appeal. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus an additional 10 years for burglary.
But the most disturbing part? Even with the confession, the why remains mostly unopened. Here lies the real horror. For a man who studied crime, who seemed academically obsessed with the mechanics of violence, Kohberger slipped up in the most basic way, leaving his DNA behind. Investigators say his DNA was robust on the knife sheath. The amount suggested long, sustained contact. Add to that his repeated phone visits to the area over months, combined with surveillance footage, this was not a spontaneous act. Yet, even as the physical evidence stacked up, the emotional and psychological puzzle remains unresolved.